of her in Harlem. Look at this photo. She just posts up right here, visiting my Uncle Freddie in Harlem. Harlem was always a magical place for me. Now, what's interesting about this picture is the man behind, I don't know if that's actually her Uncle Freddie, right? Like that came to my mind. I'm like, is this just like a guy working on the side of the street and she's just like including him because this picture shows a black man that's in Harlem and again signals to black people that like she's with her uncle up in Harlem. Kind of feels that way. But then I realized that she featured some more pictures of her black aunties and her black uncles, and we see Uncle Fred again. Take a look at this photo. This is going to drive you guys crazy because I still can't believe it when I read it. So you see three obviously black people in this photo. You would not question the authenticity of their blackness. And the caption reads, "I'm blessed with an amazing family. I'll never be able to thank Auntie Chris, Uncle Freddie, and Aunt Mary enough for their constant encouragement and support. They always showed up for me, as they did here at a campaign event for my DA's race that we held at a San Francisco, you guessed it, jazz club, because, hey, we're talking Harlem, we're talking black people, we're talking afros. Let's also post a picture of you in a jazz club with your aunties and your uncles. And like black people will just accept that you only have all these photos because you're like super black. But then I said, wait a second, she doesn't have an Aunt Mary or an Aunt Chris, or an Uncle Fred. I've been deep in this woman's genealogy. Who are we talking about here? These people do not exist. And I said, is it possible that like somewhere in the book that she's alleging, probably assuming that no one is going to actually read through, she acknowledges that these aren't her real aunties and uncles? And the answer is yes, my friends. There's a passage about Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie in this book, The Truths We Hold, which is really just the greatest trick ever played on Black America. She writes this: "My mother surrounded herself with close friends who were really more like sisters. My godmother, a fellow Berkeley student whom I knew as Aunt Mary, was one of them. They met through the civil rights movement that was taking shape in the early 1960s and was being debated and defended from the streets of Oakland to the soap boxes in Berkeley's Sproul Plaza. As Black students spoke out against injustice, a group of passionate, keenly intelligent, politically engaged young men and women found one another. My mother and Aunt Mary among them. They went to peaceful protests where they were attacked by police with hoses. They marched against the Vietnam War and for civil rights and voting rights. They went together to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak at Berkeley, and my mother had a chance to meet him. She told me that at one of these anti-war protests, the marchers were confronted by the Hells Angels. She told me that at another, she and her friend were forced to run for safety with me in a stroller after violence broke out against the protesters. But my parents and their friends were more than just protesters. They were big thinkers, pushing big ideas, organizing their community. Aunt Mary, her brother, my Uncle Freddie, my mother and father, and about a dozen other students organized a study group to read the Black writers that the university was ignoring." So you guys, what can I say here? I am being reduced to sound effects. She wrote this book and she starts the sentence with her family. She's visiting her family in Harlem. This is maybe, she wrote, "I have the best family," and shows multiple pictures of an Uncle Fred that isn't her Fred. Why did she do this? It's not her uncle, okay? It's just not her uncle. It's her mom's friend. And she dedicates so much time to him and the protest. And she's dropping Martin Luther King. And she's dropping W.E.B. Du Bois. And she's dropping so many other people that are Black in this book. For what reason? Because she's performing. Because this is a sleight of hand. Because they quite literally likely sat around in a boardroom and they said, how can we make you Black? I want to see every photo of you ever taken. And I'm going to tell you what in people's minds will just read like Blackness. So we've got Ruby Bridges now in people's memory, being embedded in people's memory. Now we've got this idea of her marching aunties and uncles in Harlem. It's just so unacceptable. It is so unacceptable. Black America, listen to me. I'm speaking directly to you because I am not playing around either. If I catch you voting for this woman, I'm going to haunt you. I'm going to haunt you in your dreams. There will be nowhere that you can go where I will not haunt you. This is just, we have to come together. At some point in society, we have to come together to declare this unacceptable. Like, I don't care where you sit on the spectrum. This is the most not okay thing that I have ever seen in the history of politics. This is how she's shoring up black votes. She's going around talking about collard greens, putting in fake pictures of her uncles and aunties that are black, while conveniently ignoring all of her aunties and uncles that are white. And people are just eating this up. Let me find that woman that was going, okay, to all that vinegar put into her call. Okay, let me find her. I'm going to haunt her. I promise you that.